Man, things are starting to heat up now that we are 13 days away from the NBA draft. We said it yesterday on yesterday's show that, hey, things could change from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, and things change from one day to the next, as we will talk about maybe some trade up possibilities for the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll get into a few other things, trade back possibilities as well. And all of it right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast that is presented by, from today through the entire summer, just like it was last summer, our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. So the PHLY Sixers podcast brought to you by Rothman Orthopedics.
They never left.
They never left.
They've been good friends to us.
Yes,
Thank you,
they
Rothman,
have.
very
So
much.
good to have Rothman Orthopedics back with us for the entire summer as we get ready for the draft, summer league, free agency, all of that stuff. Rothman Orthopedics, our presenting sponsor, as always, here on the PHLY Sixers podcast with Derek Botner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Givens, president of basketball ops. Bree, she got a lot of work to do. We got some trade-up possibilities here that we're talking about as the president of basketball ops. All of you in the conversation joining us as well, and we'll talk about the NBA Finals here shortly as we go forward. But we got to start off with the news from today. First, it came from Mike Scotto from Hoops Hype talking about the 76ers and the Spurs maybe having some initial conversations about, possibility of moving up to number 2. We've talked about Dylan Harper in the past as a potential move-up candidate for the Sixers to target at number 2. We've moved off of it a lot, focusing more on the number 3 and a lot of the different players there, maybe even moving back, which we will talk about a little bit later. But in this particular case, the move up. And with that, Kyle, you wrote a quick piece and a quick update at allphly.com on some intel with that information for the number 2 pick, and then some other stuff that we heard about trade back possibility and why that, at least today, looks less likely for the Philadelphia 76ers. So if you could start us off, your latest intel.
Sure.
Derek will get your latest intel on things as well as we begin.
Yeah, so first I would just say, to lead into this, keep in mind that with 2 weeks to go, there's a lot that can change. There's a lot of stuff that is out there for, I wouldn't say nefarious purposes, but certainly because teams are trying to jockey one way or another, or agents in a lot of cases are trying to jockey one way or another. So you don't take anyone's word as like, this is the law, this is definitely going to happen. I think the most important thing that was told to me today was just the fact that they have been in conversation with the Spurs about this, right? I think the fact that we talked about, hey, maybe they could trade up for 2, and the league views Harper as in his own tier compared to a bunch of these other guys in this class, but it was a lot of, but the Spurs will probably just take him, right? And I think as we've gotten closer to the draft, I still think the most likely scenario is San Antonio drafts Harper, even if they're not going to keep him, drafting him and then, waiting and seeing, all right, what can we do with the player who's viewed on a different tier from these teams? But I can confirm that they have talked to San Antonio about potentially trading up. I would also say, as I said in the report earlier, right now, I would throw some cold water on the possibility of trading down. That's not to say they won't, but I think the word that I heard, and I think Derek heard something very similar, is that they have a group of 4 players that they're kind of focused on right now. And so if you're not offering them the sun and the moon, the message out of that organization right now is, we're going to stay within the top 4. We want to make sure that after this season, after what they went through, all the tanking and the just keeping this pick at all, they view it as a premium asset. They're treating it like a premium asset. They want to get a premium player and a premium prospect. I think some of the natural follow-ups that I've gotten have been, well, who are the 4 players? I think a lot of that is, it's not that hard to figure out, right? Like Cooper Flagg is very clearly the number 1 player in the class. If you want to say, all I've heard is Dallas isn't dealing him. So if you just say he's siphoned off, they already had VJ in. They're having Ace in next week.
Rumors
and they're
about
trying to
trading
trade
up,
up for number 2, where Dylan Harper is viewed as, so like, I don't think there's a whole lot of reading between the lines you need to do.
I think there is some question of, would they even include Harper in that, or Flagg in that group? Because there's so little chance you're going to get him. Could that be the 4 people be, Harper and Ace and VJ and maybe Trey. That's a fair point. And by the way, like when we have these conversations, it's not like they're going to pass us the list of players. That's not, it would make no sense for them to do that.
I have full transparency. I obviously have to follow up with the Sixers on stuff like this too. And I will straight up ask them like, so who are the 4 players? And they are never going to tell you that.
We have tried. Ask. Hey, Daryl, who are you going to draft? It doesn't work. I'm sorry.
Because this is in all walks of life, but definitely as a reporter, you can never learn what you don't ask. So you make the attempt and you're going to get refuted, but you try.
Expectation setting, very unlikely Daryl's going to leak who they're going to draft to a reporter. But it is, I do think the only real question is, would you even include Flag in that group, or is that for Harper plus 3 people you could draft at 3? We'll see.
So
I think Kyle's main point, which is something we actually echoed almost verbatim on yesterday's show, we're getting less and less comfortable trading back because we're getting a little more separation in that tier, and you're not sure if one of those prospects are going to be there at 7, and that's almost verbatim what we heard today.
And so I'll add another piece onto this. I think some people would say, and this is a little bit of PTSD from the Markelle Fultz trade, right? If this team is willing to trade back, doesn't that scare you, right? The value of trading up here is not that, hey, the Spurs don't like this guy. It's that there are other teams who would want to take Harper, and they would trade with the Spurs from further down, whether that's Charlotte at 4, Utah at 5, Washington at 6. One of these teams that is more talent needy that says, hey, we have extra first round picks. We have this other stuff, but we don't have our cornerstone. We will pay a premium to go up and get this guy. And if you view Harper in that tier, if you view him as a separate tier unto himself, and we're going to talk with one of our favorite draft experts in the next couple of days about why Harper is in a different sort of stratosphere, there is a premium placed on let's get up there, right? Yep. It doesn't so much matter as here's what the Spurs need and here's what the Spurs eval potentially is of the class. It's more about what is the total evaluation from the league on Harper, because if the Spurs are open for business, that brings in a whole bunch of other teams and a whole bunch of possibilities. I would also say nothing is going to happen until likely on draft night if something happens with this pick, because not only are the Spurs engaged in these conversations with the Sixers and some other teams on number 2, but I think they are one of the short list front runners to trade for Kevin Durant. If they trade for Kevin Durant, I don't think number 2 would be part of that package, but potentially if they move from 2 to 3, they pick up an extra pick, a player, something like that. That could then get flipped as part of a trade for a Kevin Durant type player. So there are a bunch of machinations that have to play out here.
It is interesting. I'm glad you brought up the Markelle stuff, because I do feel like if this has legs to it and if this ends up, coming to fruition, part of our job over the next couple of months is going to be almost like a counselor to people who have Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum PTSD, and trying to talk you off the ledge. Just because
you've already been a counselor because of Zaire Smith and Jaden Springer and VJ Edgecombe in that conversation. But go ahead.
But that will be our role a little bit. To Kyle's point, I think part of it is also first of all, I think, what is
live
the Spurs' motivations for potentially making a trade?
I thought I was getting past the note for a second there. I didn't know what was going on.
I'm very confused.
I'll just be very very clear.
Okay.
Allergies acting up.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm completely off the track. I don't even know what I was talking about. Are we talking about basketball? We're doing the basketball, right? What's their motivation here? Is it just that, all right, look, we've got too many guards. We invested so heavily in Fox. We have, this glut. We just had the rookie of the year. We don't want to invest more in guards, so let's get the most value. Or is it we want Ace Bailey, and because of that, or at least because we have these guards now, we prioritize Ace Bailey. We don't want to take Dylan Harper, but we want Ace Bailey.
And you don't want him at 2.
Those are two rather than take him at 2, let's get an additional asset by moving down and whatnot. Those are two very different things, and it impacts the leverage that the Sixers have. It is, if it's that they have these guards, they want Ace Bailey to complement them, the Sixers have a lot of leverage to be able to move up for not an exorbitant price. If it is they just want to get the most value, the Spurs, then you have a little bit less leverage. Then you do have to worry, to what Kyle was talking about earlier, of every other team trying to jump up to 2, and maybe they don't have as good of a draft asset, but you can get like really good picks down the line. You can get really good players. You can get really good role players or young players or development players. Either way, having that many different if it's basically that them targeting Ace Bailey, there's only one permutation that they would realistically want to do. You don't want to move down to 5 or 6 because Ace Bailey's probably not going to be there. 6 would have a ton of leverage. If it's just they want to try to get the most out of the second pick, then it's a little bit more difficult. You might have to overpay a little bit.
All right, so what's that look like? What's the overpay look like? Or what does it look like in general if we're...
I think it's as simple as the Clippers pick in 28.
Because there's already people who are worried about, is Jared McCain is involved, I'm out. That kind of conversation of if you're looking to move a player that we like, I'm out because you want to keep him along with the others and go forward. Now, we've also talked about it being a crowded backcourt because of that. Not that, as Derek said yesterday, you're not going to complain about having too many ball handlers, but in this case, he's going to get pushed back a little bit because the natural fit might be Maxey next to Harper, and he's the number 2 overall pick, so he's probably going to get that edge there with McCain and Grimes then coming off the bench. So would you rule that out, that San Antonio would ask for Jared McCain in a scenario like that?
They might ask for him, but so he does do something different than Castle and do something different than Fox. And so maybe there's appeal to them to say, hey, we get a real shooter in the backcourt next to these guys. And we feel good about, Wembanyama as the do everything defensive guy behind all that we don't really care that if we play these small lineups, it'll matter. I suspect it would be more on the pick side. I think for their purposes, for what they're trying to do, I think just having an unprotected first like that Clippers pick is probably just easier to immediately reroute. Unless, maybe if they're doing that Durant trade we're talking about, maybe Phoenix is like, hey, we'd rather just have Jared McCain, right? Because we don't have a lot of future hope. We don't have all these, picks in the future to do anything with. So maybe they would be interested in that, and that's a separate conversation. I would expect that it starts and ends with, will you trade the 2028 Clippers pick? And for me, I think that's an easy yes. It is a valuable pick, but the whole reason you trade for or you covet a pick like that, right, is so you can hopefully turn that into a franchise centerpiece, right? Whether that's using that pick in the draft, whether that's making that part of a package for, you trade that and other stuff for a star who's on the way out, a young ascending player, whatever it is. So I believe Dylan Harper's got like multi-time all-star potential, like a narrow path to all-NBA future, but definitely all-star potential within him. And if you believe that, that's the exact scenario that you accumulate these kind of assets for, right? And I think when you just think of if you hold on to McCain, right? And I think in most scenarios you would here. I just don't see McCain being part of this, but we'll see. If you hold on to him, Harper just makes sense next to all these guys, but also does something different than they do, right? And that's a little bit of the problem with like a VJ Edgecombe, right? Or even like a Trey Johnson, right? It's a lot of guys who are probably secondary playmakers at best, who are shooters and off-ball players versus Dylan Harper is a guy you're going to give the ball. He's going to go past people, go through people, and draw the attention to himself in the middle of the floor. And that creates all these opportunities for the Maxies, for the McCains, for Paul George, for anybody you could put on the floor with him, while also having prototypical size, right? Like he's not going to come in as a rookie and be an impact defender. But when we talk about all these concerns, like, oh, Tyrese Maxey's 6'2", Jared McCain is 6'2", it's hard to find, backcourt combinations where this works. This is the type of player it works with. It's a 6'5", 6'6", playmaking, get to the rim, get free throws, guard up in the lineup type of player. That's exactly what you're looking for next to these guys. So unlike these other guys that we're talking about in the draft that are talented, but maybe not, it's an imperfect fit, and we're saying, you probably got to trade one of these guys. I don't think that's the case with this player and the guys that they already have on hand.
All right, let's take a quick pause because I want to get Derek's thoughts on just that. What could it potentially look like with those 4 guards? McCain stays You do move up to pick number 2. You get Harper. How does that all play out with that 4-guard potential rotation for the Philadelphia 76ers next season? We'll do all that when we get right back here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
And guys, it's trade season in the NBA. It's shopping season. If you're looking for some furniture,
put your feet up.
Spring into savings at Ashley, where you can save up to 50% off of living rooms, bedrooms, and dining rooms and have it all delivered for free. Get long-term, no-interest financing. You can save on top-brand mattresses, get free delivery, setup, and removal. Maybe Devon will even get a tissue while he's there. I'm sure their customer service is as A+ as their partners have been with us and, providing us with what we need to get a show done.
Well, if I'm sitting on your back porch, I got to have...
Yeah, listen, if Devon's out amongst the pollen and everything else,
I'm at your place.
You're sitting on that nice outdoor furniture you bought at Ashley, we'll make sure that we have some things to blow your nose ready at the same time, Devon. That's the type of customer service we expect around here and at Ashley. So spring into savings now at Ashley, South Jersey, and Philadelphia. Financing comes with approved credit, minimum purchase required. Some exclusions may apply. See store for complete details. Hurry to Ashley. Visit ashleyfurniture.com for more information.
And while my allergies may be kicking in right at showtime, that's all right. You can keep it going and even talk about some injuries that I may have had. And that is my repair that was done from our presenting sponsor for the entire summer for all the Sixers coverage, Rothman Orthopedics. That's my place to go when it comes to fixing any injuries. They have tissues at their offices too. I can definitely tell you that for sure. But with that, whether it's biking, playing basketball, some tennis, some golf, and a little tweak here or there running around with the kids, and you need to get it checked out, well, your body's not cooperating. That's what Rothman Orthopedics does, in fact, come in. From those aches and pains to all the things that I just laid out for those pickup games running around and being active in the summer, you want to make sure that your summer is not put on pause because of these things. And visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to book your appointment today and get back to what you're doing, what you love to do, and do so pain-free. I'll just give you my latest with my Achilles. With that year that had happened in the summer, I've said it before, I was a week away from going on vacation. Popped my Achilles playing on that one Sunday. We were leaving on Saturday to go to our vacation destination. I immediately went to Rothman just a day later by calling them and got right in, got checked out and diagnosed quickly. So I could still fly. They told me what to do for my flying because of my relationship with Rothman Orthopedics, my doctor that was going to do my surgery, and boom, I was still able to go on that trip, enjoy myself, and then came right back. And the next day, got the surgery done, and I was ready to go. So here I am a few years later, and I'm back to being my normal active self, and that's because my friends at Rothman Orthopedics. And they do have plenty of offices. Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers, including 3 right in Philly, located in Center City, Northeast Philly, and now at the Navy Yard in South Philly. That's where you get it done. My last one, my Achilles, right at the Navy Yard. Very easy to get to, in and out. I was good to go. So if you are looking to get checked out and you need to get checked out, make sure you go check out my people at Rothman Orthopedics. Visit rothmanortho.com/landing/PHLY. And before we get Derek's thoughts, we got to tell you about a big deal that happened last night. And our big deal last night is presented by Cherry Hill Jeep. And I'll tell you about Cherry Hill Jeep. I know people buy Jeeps elsewhere. I just don't know why. Drive home in your Jeep today, just minutes from all bridges, or available online 24/7 at Jeep at cherryhill.com. The Indiana Pacers. That's a big deal. We all thought OKC was going to win that game.
Right.
They were down 9 at one point, and then the big deal happened. Indiana turned it around like they generally do.
No, their fourth quarter defense, one of the things that OKC has been great at all year and very consistent is dominating the turnover battle. They force more turnovers than pretty much anyone in the league. They take care of the ball better than almost anyone in the league. And that was completely flipped last night and certainly down the stretch. And like when TJ can pull off 3 TJ plays in the span of one game, credible to watch. But overall, their defense over the last, really since the Siakam trade, but it's just so much better and so much more swarming and so much more competitive. And I think that really showed last night.
I think the thing that was most striking from the end of that game were all the Thunder players standing around, hands on knees, bent over with 8 minutes to go in that game, right? Like that, they are a team that wears people down,
Yep.
right? So to see Indiana turn Shea into a guy who's sucking wind out there on the court, they did a really impressive job of making Shea work, right? Like he was in a lot of actions last night on the defensive end. It's not to say that he can't hold up on those, but when you ask someone to, carry a high defensive burden, who's the engine of your offense, and they're doing a really good job fighting over screens, making them really fight to even get the ball in the first place, they wore them down. That team having a real defense has just taken them to such a different level than they were at a year ago.
They were a borderline joke. Like, they were 26, 28 in the league pretty much every year. And it's like, they weren't great this year. I think they're right around average, but they've dialed it up.
But from like
there.
January, late January onward, they have been a two-way force. So, credit to them for what they've built there.
So this story, just with them, Derek, you said it yesterday on social media as the game was playing out, and eventually went to the Pacers 2-1 in the series, that this is an improbable run because no one saw them just taking over the East the way that they did. And now for the team that many of us expected to get to the finals, representing the West, but be the heavy favorite once they got there, up big in game one, you drop that one. Same thing with the Knicks in game one. You drop it, it flipped the series, man. Now you're playing from behind, trying to catch up. Not just catching up in points in that game, but you're trying to catch up in games in the series. That's a 7-game series. But it's not a team that we expected to be here. And they've surpassed everybody in the East.
Yeah. No, it really is great. And like we said before the series, on the one hand, I thought OKC was a heavy favorite. And they should have been. They won 1 billion games. And they were one of the better two-way teams and the best defensive team by a long shot. One of the best defensive teams we've seen in modern NBA history. But I really kind of wanted the Pacers to, if not win, at least have a chance, because it's been such a great story and it's been such a great turnaround. And it's really inspiring to see them go from where they are with a bunch of players that I think a lot of people didn't necessarily believe in. Like, nobody really thought that Haliburton was going to develop into what he was going to be. A lot of people had doubt of whether Siakam was going to be worth that contract that he was going to get after being traded away. And they have just, between those two and a whole bunch of role players, and they've had so much depth develop over the last couple of years. It's a really fun story.
Contributions all around, and that is our big deal. The Indiana Pacers, after 3 games, up 2-1 over the OKC Thunder. Game 4 will be tomorrow. That's the big deal presented by Cherry Hill Jeep. All right, let's get back to the Dylan Harper conversation.
The real story.
Kyle,
the real big deal.
The real big deal. Kyle talked about it before the break, and I wanted Derek's thoughts to go on of how would this look? No McCain out. He stays. How does this look? How does this make the Sixers competing with a team like Indiana, man, with all the depth that they have? How does this change?
Yeah, and in terms of what it would take real quickly, I do think what I mentioned earlier about like what's San Antonio's motivation. Is it to get ace or is it to get the most out of the second pick? I think that's key. I'm with Kyle. Including McCain is where I don't feel comfortable anymore. That Clippers pick, yes, I would do. I do think there is a pretty clear separation between Harper and the rest that would be available at 3, and the rest is always sort of the way that I have described it. I saw Kyle mentioning this in the chat, but we were very clear before the lottery, before we knew which pick the Sixers would have.
Frankly, before March Madness.
Before we even knew if the Sixers would have a pick, that there was a top-ranked player, a second-ranked player, and then a separate tier of about 4 to 6 players that was really hard to gauge and get any separation from. So I do think Harper has been in a tier by himself pretty much since the moment I started scouting this draft. So this is not a change. We're not reacting to the situation. This is just how we felt after scouting him. And, we were just on yesterday's show, and we were talking like, what's one of the questions, one of the super chats was, what's one of the indicators for star equity? And one of the first things, if not the first thing I went to, I think first there was shooting off the dribble, which Harper's
that's the big question with him.
But
obviously,
the second one was putting pressure on the rim. And he puts pressure on the rim as well as anybody in this class, better than anyone in this class. And when you have someone
better than a lot of people in recent memory.
Yeah, no, his numbers driving in the half court in college, especially as a freshman, but really just in general, are elite and as good of any prospect as you have seen in recent memory. And when you can that consistently put pressure on the rim and mix in that kind of playmaking ability, I don't think he's necessarily like an elite passer. Like someone like Jonas has more vision and creativity. But like we mentioned in yesterday's show, passing and shot creation is about a combination of being able to force rotations and make those passes. And he can make those passes well enough. And I think he's got Yeah, I actually don't like. I don't want to call him just a making the obvious pass, because I think some of his dump offs to big men and wraparound passes does show a lot of creativity. And then he also has the kick out passes. He can hit a roller on a pick and roll. He's just got a whole bunch of passes in his arsenal that maybe not all of them are elite, but because of the pressure he puts on the rim and puts on the defense, he can be a real good playmaker as well. And it's one thing that we've been talking about. It's been brought up with San Antonio. All right, they've got two guards in Fox and Castle. Maybe that's why they don't want him. Why would the Sixers want him when they have Maxey and McCain? It's fundamentally different. Both of San Antonio's guards, they base their game on putting pressure on the rim. Like, they're streaky to bad shooters who make their business by driving. And
Fox is like average-ish.
Yeah, and streaky and whatnot. So adding a third with a similar play style is a tough fit. But with the Sixers, when you've got two guys who you're not really sure are necessarily point guards, who don't have great creativity in passing, who are also both really, really good playing off ball and catch and shoot game and moving off of screens and relocating, mixing in someone of Dylan Harper's archetype is a lot easier. And I think a lot easier to keep the three of them happy. And I think that's a key part. If you are sitting there in San Antonio and you're with Fox, are you worried if Fox is going to be okay having a number 2 pick come in? Are you concerned that Harper might not want to go there because Fox is going to control the ball? I don't think you have to worry about that here in Philly. And with so much uncertainty over the future of this franchise, Harper is basically a pull-up jumper away from being an all-star and or all-NBA caliber guard. I think the rest of his game, despite the fact that it's a largely below-the-rim game in terms of finishing at the rim, I think the rest of his game will translate very well. It all comes down to that pull-up jumper. I think there's some legitimate concerns of it. I don't think he's necessarily a non-shooter, but I think he's got a lot of work to put in. But if that translates, I think you've got a guy you can build an offense around for a long time.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, Derek. Do you think Harper is closer to Flag on his tier or the other? Because we've said he's in his own tier. But in terms of like distance between these players, do you think there's less separation between Harper and Flag or Harper and rest of the class? So whether that's VJ, Ace, Khan, whoever you would have at 3, Trey.
Yeah.
Where's the bigger gap?
I think this is going to be such a cop-out. I think they're pretty close to evenly sized gaps. Like, I do think there's some significant separation between Flag and Harper, but I do think there's some separation between Harper and the rest. I would say probably closer to, because that, and INS is making a comment that all NBA is a bold statement. It is, but I preface that with if he develops that pull-up jumper, which is far and away his biggest question mark. The pull-up jumper and the questions around it are legitimate enough that I would say he's closer to the 3 tier than he is the Flag, but I do think there's some significant separation.
Yeah, and I asked because we've talked about it as if Flag is in his own tier, we agree on. Harper's in his own tier, we agree on. When we've gotten to these other guys, we've said, these guys are if you said this was a loaded draft, most of these guys after that are like, and they might be the 6th pick, right? They wouldn't be the 3rd pick. And if Harper is like a very clear, this guy's a 2nd pick that could be in a weaker draft, the number 1 guy, I think he is probably, I think he might be closer to Flag than the rest of them. Flag is still far and away the best prospect, but that's the type of talent that we're talking about.
I think the upside is closer to Flag than the rest of the tier. But I think the only reason I'm hesitating, and like I said, I think he's probably like splitting the difference. The only reason I would hesitate is because of the pull-up jumper.
He'll work. He'll make the shots. He'll work to get better at those shots.
And here's the thing.
And he will put in that work.
I know there's again, we're dealing with a lot of PTSD with this fan base. He's a willing pull-up jump shooter. He will take those shots when they're there. I think he took like 5 a game.
Yeah.
They just didn't really.
He didn't make enough of them.
And there was a lot of like left-right variation. Like, it's not like he was just missing short or something like that. He was off at times, but I don't think it's like fundamentally broken. I worry a little bit. He's got a little bit of a low release. It's a little bit out in front of him. I worry he's going to need a little more space to get it off. But I don't think I don't think he has no shooting touch. I think he just needs to refine it.
All right. Look, folks, we're going to take another quick pause. Then I'll come. I feel like Shaq. Remember when Shaq was like, no, just go ahead, Chuck. It was supposed to be 1, 2, then 3. No, it's just 1, 2, and back to 1. I'll say something when
Next
we get back.
segment's the Devon Givens segment.
So when we come back, I'll give my thoughts on that. And then we'll also talk about, while we do, Kyle and Derek got the info about not necessarily right now a trade back possibility, more of the trade up. There were some reports that were out there about the trade back possibilities. We don't want to ignore the fact that they were out there, and we will talk about it because maybe you have seen them, maybe you haven't. We'll get to them when we get back right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Rothman Orthopedics. And I just told you about the Cherry Hill Jeep that you need to go ahead and check out. Our big deal is the Indiana Pacers from winning Game 3 and taking a 2-1 lead over OKC. Well, we got to tell you about now going to the Cherry Hill Triplex and getting there for your Jeep or your Ram truck. There's only one dealership in South Jersey who has been the market leader since 1967. It's the friends, our friends at cherryhilljeep.com. They have you covered with the best selection and, most importantly, the best prices. Slide on in to Jeep Cherokee this month. Not only is it the most awarded SUV ever, it was also named MotorWeek's best mid-size utility vehicle for the past 2 years in a row. That's in addition to being the 2024 IIHS top safety pick. So stop in today, tell them PHLY sent you, and receive an additional $1,000 for your trade-in. I know people buy Jeeps and Ram trucks elsewhere. Just don't know why. Drive in your new Jeep or Ram truck today, just minutes from all bridges, or available online 24/7 at cherryhilljeep.com.
All right, and we also want to tell you about Golden Nugget Jewelers. For the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers has operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. Customers from across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget Jewelers to find that perfect engagement ring or wedding band. Their staff is highly trained and dedicated to providing a personalized shopping experience. Golden Nugget Jewelers has a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, along with high-end watches, fashion jewelry, and sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and more. And you receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. Golden Nugget Jewelers has been a family-owned and operated business since 1987, right there on Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com to learn more today.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast. Talking a lot of rumors today, and some of that, of course, with the Sixers potentially maybe looking to talk. Well, they have talked, as Kyle reported, to the San Antonio Spurs about moving up to number 2. How real is this, and what does that look like? Don't worry, everybody. I was just kidding before the break. I am a point guard myself, so I know I have to dish it out when my guys are cooking. You just let them you pass them the ball and just let them go. But just my quick thoughts on it, and then we'll get
one
to
question for Kyle. No,
Are you sure?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, let me pass it back to you, man.
You went from doing like 4-hour shows by yourself to having to deal with Kyle and I. It's rough.
Hey, man, dish it out. Let everybody, we all cook here on the PHLY Sixers show. So just my thoughts, point guard wise, it's just simply that, number one, Kyle, you mentioned in the story where we saw a lot of success with Tyrese Maxey playing off ball. We discussed it a little bit yesterday, him playing off ball and being able to score the basketball. And then the other part to that is we've also talked about him and maybe lack of making sure that we see a lot of point guard stuff from him. While we've seen improvement because he has improved, we also want to see him score and not necessarily he never disappears because he's Tyrese Maxey, but you always want to be able to see him involved one way or the other because he's that important for their offense. So you see that. That's one piece of it where you can have Tyrese Maxey slide off ball, be able to play off ball, where we saw a little bit of that with Jared McCain. Some of it with Quentin Grimes when he was there. Some of it with Paul George when he had a lot of those responsibilities, allowing Maxey to score when they get into some of those ruts. The other part was if Joel Embiid is back, you have a point guard where we've seen Tyrese Maxey do it with their patented play with the pick and pop, the pick and roll. And the same thing for James Harden, where he had that point guard mindset with Dylan Harper, as these guys have talked about. That's his mindset. Yes, he can score. Yes, he can do those things, but he can absolutely get those guys involved. And when you talk about Derek speaking about those creative passes that you might have, well, not only would it be in that pick and pop kind of way, but it's also in getting to that rim, getting to the basket where he can finish, but he draws that attention and makes it easy for the big fella to maybe finish at the rim where he doesn't have to put in as much work. It's less work for him to finish, especially if he is going to be nursing those knees and how he can play, what that looks like, how is he on the floor, where you're having your point guard make sure that your big fella doesn't have to do extra work to finish those plays. So for a point guard, for me, we already know about the stuff that's going to be designed, and he's going to spot those players on the perimeter where he can find Jarrett McCain and find Paul George for those outside shots. But it's also making sure that Joel Embiid doesn't have to work as much, doesn't have to work as hard to get those shots. Not those 17-footers that we know are layups from the jump shooting aspect, but those things that are in close also. We've been making the long joke, and we talk about T.J. McConnell and that importance. It's not a lie when we say that James Harden was the best interior passer. Nick Batum was the best interior passer. T.J. McConnell was his last best interior passer before those two arrived. You could even say George Niang, because he wasn't afraid to make the pass of that interior pass, hit the hand, over the top pass, just to get into him and allow him to make that play at the rim. That's a point guard. And Dylan Harper can do those types of things of the very simple interior pass, a bounce pass, hand where he doesn't have to be pushed out 18 feet away from the basket where he already had his man sealed to make sure that he get those things. Those are the simple basketball point guard plays that they have lacked seeing for many, many years in the Sixers uniform, where Nick Batum was here for half a season and James Harden was here for a year and a half. And we haven't seen it really in a long-term play since T.J. McConnell was here with Joel Embiid in the past. So those are just some of the small things for a point guard that will be important for me for the Dylan Harper piece to play along with someone like Joel Embiid.
And let me add on something that we've talked about with some of these other prospects. Harper as a ball handler is full stop the best guard in this class at dealing with pressure, right?
Brought it up yesterday.
When we talk about the situation, how it impacted Ace, in a very similar fashion, when Harper has the ball, teams were throwing all kinds of stuff at him on that Rutgers for doubles, traps, shading an extra man off a non-shooter, whatever it is, and didn't turn the ball over a ton, still made a lot of plays as a playmaker, and just as importantly, he's splitting doubles, he's getting to his spots, he's manipulating the defense to draw fouls, right? So, like, what you see in the playoffs is that the game is all about, and you bring this up all the time, Devon, getting to your spots, wherever those are, right? It's who can, whether it's physically with strength, whether it's speed, whether it's with the handle, who can get into their wheelhouse and finish and score and set up other teammates, right? Because you're going to have guys leaning on you. You're going to see exotic coverages, players who are playable alongside you to open up the floor in the regular season. They might be targets. They might get hunted in the playoffs. And all of a sudden, hey, there's a lot. You're operating in a little bit more of a phone booth. You got more pressure around you. How good is your handle? How good is your ability to still see that coverage, see that pressure, and not turn the ball over, not take a bad shot, not give the ball away and have the other team get transition buckets the other way. Dylan Harper was better at everyone else in this class at getting to those spots, at making high-value passes, and at seeing doubles, seeing pressure, seeing the things that a number one option faces in the NBA and using that to his advantage. That is probably the most concrete reason that you'd put him above all these other guys. Because when you get to, VJ, we talk about his issues with his handle. With Ace, playing on the same team, strictly could not get to the rim most of the time, right? And there are big questions about his shot selection as a product of his skill. Con Knipple, they're the athleticism questions, right? Can he get by guys? Can he do this at the next level? And you go on down the list. Harper is the guy who feels, unlike a lot of these guys, context proof in that way because he's got the frame, the skill, and all the other stuff. So that's a big reason why you would push to move up for him, is that it just feels like a skill and a sensibility about how he sees the floor that is not going to change once he's up against these guys in the NBA.
To your point, and look, I promise I'm not doing this to make this about Ace Bailey, but they played on the exact same team with the same context. Dylan Harper made 69 half-court layups at 62.7%. Ace Bailey made 16 half-court layups on the season at 42%. They're playing in the same context with the same teammates.
One is 4 inches taller.
One is 4 inches tall. Now, look, that's in part because Ace Bailey's handle and ability to get to the rim is poor. It goes beyond team context. He just does not do a great job of it for a number of reasons, which we won't get into now. Dylan Harper is exceptional at it. Kyle is right. He is great at, first of all, he's got counters in pretty much every way, whether it's changing direction, changing speeds, going either direction with the ball. He just has an answer for what the defense throws at him, and he never gets sped up. And those are two skills at that age that's wildly impressive. Like, those are two things that that players usually spend a long time trying to develop. And he's got so many of these skills that are hard to develop, right? It's hard to like turn yourself from someone who struggles getting the rim into someone who can get there at will. You just don't become a great driver. You can learn how to become a better shooter. You can learn how to become a pull-up jumper. It's real tough to learn how to be able to manipulate a defense like that and change speed and change direction, develop your handle, your willingness to take contact, your touch at the rim, your body control. That's another thing. Like, when we start talking about athletes, he's not a nuclear vertical athlete. I don't think he's quite as terrible. Like, some people like pretend that he's like slow-mo. He's not that level of a non-athlete, but he's not a nuclear vertical athlete.
How about the comparison to Cade Cunningham that you see a lot for him? Cunningham, I think, is more athletic.
Yeah, and I think Cade was
just a much better shot
shooter.
maker. That's the big separation between those two.
But my point is, there's more to athleticism than just sheer vertical leaping ability, and even more than just like a first step. Like, your ability to maintain your balance, to play under control, to change direction, your body control. And he's exceptional at pretty much all of that. And it's just, he's got so many of those things. And even passing. We've seen firsthand here how difficult it is to develop as a passer and a playmaker. For him to be 6'6" and be able to put that pressure on the rim and be able to make those passes, even if they're not like James Harden highlight reel passes, just the fact that he's got his head up while driving, he's surveying the floor, he's reading where the defense is rotating from, and he makes the passes, and he does have that creativity with the dump off the big men. It's just, there's so much he does well that's really tough to teach. And the one thing he doesn't do well is the one thing that a lot of front offices and a lot of coaching staffs feel like they have a chance to turn around in a big way.
I'll say maybe when you talk about the athleticism rise and all that, maybe like a Malcolm Brogdon type of pace, under control, knows how to, again, get to his spots and find guys and do all that stuff. So I'll say that. But I think he's more athletic than even he is. But
yeah, I agree.
When I look at that, that's the kind of player I would even.
And you're also talking about, but like, I had a conversation on social media yesterday where someone was comparing VJ, for example, to what was Chris Dunn when he was coming out. Well, Chris Dunn, when he declared for the draft, was 22 years old and a senior, whereas VJ was a freshman who's 19, putting up similar numbers. So if Dylan Harper, as an 18, 19-year-old teenager, is comparable to Malcolm Brogdon, who was like, was he a super senior when he left Virginia?
Yeah, definitely.
He definitely was an upper class. I think he was like 23 when he left school, right? So if you're comparing him at that age physically to, a guy who was leaving school 3 or 4 years later, that's a good thing, right? Like the functional strength, all that. Now, I think you want him to be more explosive than Brogdon has been throughout his career, but it's at least a player who is in the, we'll say, in the ballpark for the athleticism.
Because it's the athleticism,
not the skill stuff.
It's the poise, it's that playing at your speed and not being sped up, all those things, while still being able to, impact the game the way that he does. All right, our final pause here before we get to our super chats, talk about those trade back possibilities that were out there, that were at least reported. We'll discuss those as well right here on a big day. Sixers, again, 13 days away from the draft. Things are heating up. The conversations are all over the place. We're talking about it right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
All right. As a reminder, we want to make sure you know about the Ball Knowers the Ball Knowers bonus. We've got another Ball Knower bonus that we'd like to tell you about. Again, for each game of the NBA Finals, all you have to do is pick the winner of the game, which means do not, under any circumstance, listen to us. You can win a gift card to the PHLY merch store if you make your pick correctly. First, click on the link in the description below and make your pick, and place an order in the ALLCITY merch store with a $25 minimum. If you pick correctly, you get a gift card to the merch store for the same amount as your original order. An important note, you must click on the link in the chat or in our show notes to qualify for the gift card. So again, for all ball knowers, make the pick, place an order. If you pick correctly, you're going to get a gift card from us for the same amount as your order. That's the Ball Knower bonus from PHLY.
And, of course, there's an ultimate fan experience coming up on the calendar, guys, in New York City. Fanatics Fest taking over the Javits Center June 20th through the 22nd. Get ready for 3 days of nonstop sports, culture, collectibles with your favorite athletes, creators, and celebrities. Cooper DeJean, Brian Dawkins, Nick Foles, Allen Iverson, Dawn Staley. They're all going to be there under one roof. You can get a selfie with some of these legends, exclusive merch, fantasy drafts, card drops, sneakers, live podcasts from, they say the biggest names in the game. I don't think we'll be there, so I don't know if that's necessarily true. But a lot of people that you'll want to run into. NFL, NBA, MLB, WWE, Fanatics Fest is where you guys can become part of the story. Fanatics Fest NYC, sports, culture, collectibles, all in one place. Get your tickets now at fanaticsfest.com.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast. I like this one, though. Cal Sixer in the chat says, Dylan Harper equal Andre Miller. Love Andre Miller. Big fan. Wawa Marvel says, no thanks. Andre Miller was tough. Yeah.
He was tough, but he had like a big part of his game was that mid-range jumper.
Yeah, because he's not a three-point shooter where you can maybe get a little bit more.
I do
from
think
that from Harper.
it's relevant with the size. Like another big thing with Harper is that just having that size, especially when your game is built around driving in the rim, but also or driving to the rim, but also like you just don't. There's so many passes that it's tough for Tyrese Maxey to make, especially for a guy who's going to operate a lot in the pick and roll. We haven't really talked about it too much, but Harper is very comfortable in the pick and roll, not in a traditional way because he's not a pull-up shooting threat, but he's just able to use that to then manipulate the defense and get there to his spots off the dribble. For a guy to play in that kind of a set, having that kind of size is such a bonus.
And finishing as a lefty, craftiness, that's a big
Love
part.
a lefty.
Big advantage, man, with those lefties and how they finish. All right, let's talk about this one that, Derek, you sent a little bit earlier to us in our chat, but based on you guys reporting, shot down. But that being said, there was one from Yahoo and Kevin O'Connor speaking about his mock draft and having the Sixers trading back from 3, getting 7, where they selected Malawach. There was also, some conversation there about in that deal, Herb Jones, as we talked about, would have been included in that, plus a 2026 Pacers pick. But the Malawach thing was like, oh, wait a minute, at pick number 7, just to, give some thoughts on that, since that was one that caught your eye earlier.
So what was Kevin O'Connor one? It was, you got Herb Jones 7
Herb
and
Jones
another
7,
pick, right?
26
And it's
Pacers.
2026 Pacers, top
something,
4 protected. From our friend Sam Vicini, there was also
he had a
double trade back
down
for 6, 18, and 32.
Right. So I think the KOC, it's tough to have this conversation now that I've just been
but it was
about
just
Dylan
more
Harper for 40 minutes.
Right.
Not really quite as interested as I was, this morning. I think the Kevin O'Connor one is good value. I do have a lot of reservations trading down to 7, and selecting Malawach there is kind of like showcases why I have those conversations.
Yeah.
That would not be the direction that I would go with that selection. But there's also, I don't think necessarily a great prospect. Because I think that the top 6, not necessarily in order, but we're, Flag, Harper,
Bailey,
Edgecombe, Trey was gone, and Khan was gone, right? That's like my doomsday scenario right there.
Because then you're choosing between a Malawach, between a Fears, CMB, guys who are either imperfect fits or
if we don't mention Sengway here, Hedva is going to have we got to mention just to keep her happy. But yes, yeah, that would be my concern. It's fair value. I'd love to avoid those 6 going top 6.
Yeah, and so I would say the reporting today was not that it's impossible they're going to trade back, right? And as you guys should know, you listen to us talk about this stuff all the time. The Sixers are very obviously incentivized right now to push the message around the league. We view, now you would think top 3. We think there's a clear 3 guys, right? But the word that's out there to other teams around the league has been, hey, there's 4 players that we're really interested in, right? And so if you want us to go past 4, teams are hearing around the league, like, you better pony up, right? You better be giving us premium picks. I better get a really good young player. I better get someone who can be a cornerstone of this organization, right? And so they are very obviously incentivized for that to be the message around the league. It doesn't matter if they end up staying at 3 and picking, it's still during this period leading into the draft behooves them to say, we're not going to trade down, right? To send that message so that when the Wizards front office, Sean Marks in Brooklyn, Ujiri in Toronto, if they're calling the Sixers on draft night, the baseline has been established, right? We don't want to move out of this spot. We want a premium player at the top of this class that we sacrificed a lot for this season, right? We made our fans watch complete slop for 82 games basically to get this pick. If you want us to move this, you better move the sun, the stars, the moon to us to make that happen. So regardless of whether they trade down or don't, right now that is what you're going to hear. So it's not saying that it can't happen, but up until they're on the clock and they're in a position where they need to make a selection, this is the message you're going to hear. I do tend to think, based on how Daryl Morey sees the world in terms of players, and frankly, a little bit with Elton Brand too, right? Elton Brand's a very powerful voice in that front office. When Elton was in charge, it was, we're going to take 3 role players, well, 2 and Jared Bayless's expiring contract, we'll say, and turn that into Jimmy Butler. We're going to turn Landry Shamet and some other contracts into Tobias Harris. Well, oops on, all the Tobias Harris stuff, but their MOs combined has been one really good guy is more valuable than a couple of nice players, right? And so if you think Harper is at that level, or even if they trade up to number 2 and it's because they want to guarantee they take somebody else, which I'd be shocked by, the value is worth it if you truly believe that player is an all-star, all-NBA potential player.
Yeah. No, and to Kyle's point, because the message that we both had in our conversation today is very much like trade down's overblown, but there's still time, and you never know. You could get a Godfather offer, which is, exactly. I'm not saying they wouldn't trade down, I'm not saying that they're lying, but it's exactly what you would say if you're like, well, you better give us something good. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean like, trade down's an impossibility. A lot of stuff is smokescreen and messaging, and and they should ask for a lot, quite frankly. I do think, just forgetting about what we've
starts
heard,
at 3.
right? I do think just forgetting about what we've heard and forgetting about the reports, Harper to me seems like a guy Daryl Morey would push some chips in for.
Yes.
He seems like his kind of guy that he would go after, a big guard who can get to the free throw line. I think that's one skill set he has that I think can grow a lot as he gets into an NBA spacing. But a big guard who puts pressure on the rim and can pass and be a hub of offense, I think that's the kind of guy that Daryl Morey would push some assets in for and go in for. It's just whether or not the Spurs are actually going to listen.
All right, fellas, we got a lot of super chats, so let's start to run some of these questions in here. Start with Skunk Riley saying, don't do it. If they are indeed into 4 players, stay put. If you want to trade down, do it. Nobody except Flag is worthy of a trade up.
Just because they've narrowed their list down to 4 players doesn't mean they have 4 players ranked equally.
Yeah. And look, if they could get up to 1 and draft Flag, they would do it.
Sure, of course.
They don't think it's possible. Is my read on it.
I understand, like, if you're not sold enough on Harper to want to trade up and burn assets, but just like I said, just because they have 4 players ranked doesn't mean they're ranked equally. It doesn't mean they're as comfortable with any of them or all of them. It's I think it's reasonable to have very clear differentiations.
All right, thanks, Skunk. Appreciate the super chat. We go to Marty Bones saying, TJ doing TJ things in the finals. How do you feel about how you think Joe feels? Hashtag grittiness.
I think he's probably very happy for him.
Yeah.
They have a very strong relationship.
And remember that report that came out about he texting Tyrese Halliburton to be more aggressive in the early parts of the playoffs. So you would think he's rooting for the Indiana Pacers here.
I'm very happy for TJ that he's having the moment that he's having. Not just now, obviously last playoffs he had some big moments in the playoffs as well. But I've said it multiple times. Haven't covered many like bad eggs covering the Sixers. A lot of good guys in the locker room and people that when they leave you root for their success. He's definitely near the top of the list though. Like A+ guy, and all his teammates would tell you just a good guy to have around. So happy for his success.
Yep. Moving on to Hedfa with the super chat. Very active in the conversation, but wanted to throw in the super chat, and we appreciate it. Harper would come in and immediately be the best playmaker on the squad, in my opinion, which says something about the roster if you can say that about a rookie.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he would easily. And again, I think McCain has really good vision, but I like Harper's just going to put so much more pressure, and it is a combination of pressure and vision.
A lot of it's just simply about IQ and how they see the game and how they play it. And I agree that he would also.
Playmaking is also additive, right? Like if you bring in Harper and you have McCain, who we think is a good playmaker, but not a you control the offense and run the team playmaker. When you have that guy as a secondary option on a given play, that's great, right? When you get to the playoffs and you're trying to put teams into tough positions and in rotation, you need guys who, like McCain, can hit shots, but also if he attacks the closeout and then the defense collapses on him, that he can make that extra kick out. He can make the drop off so you're not asking him to be, hey, Jared McCain, run 30 pick and rolls a game and be that type of playmaker. It's use your game intelligence, use your floor reads, your floor game, and make the smart play, the easy play when there's already an advantage that's been created. I think he's overqualified for that type of role. And I think by getting a Harper who can shoulder more of the, hey, I'm going to just run the offense for the next 8 to 10 minutes of this game, it allows somebody like McCain, it allows Maxey in more of that secondary role to focus on more discrete playmaking stuff, that you'll see that come forward a little bit.
And we talk about the Pacers as part of the big deal. I keep bringing up the Nembhard piece because of how he is that other secondary playmaker. Forget about TJ when he comes in, he runs it. But when things go the other way and it's not Siakam or Halliburton, Nembhard is a really good playmaker for his role for how they do things on the Indiana Pacers. And it doesn't have to be flashy. It has to be the right play. And just seeing things, the skip passes as well, those quick decisions that are really good for those basketball teams. You could see that from McCain. And even Maxey, who's getting lost in this as if he's a bad playmaker. He's just not those guys as playmakers. He's not Harper as a playmaker, but he has definitely improved since being in the league. Mr. Sandman, Bring Me a Dream, says, how is Maxey the face of the franchise with a ball-dominant point guard like Harper? The 76ers are a clueless organization.
I mean, he made his first All-Star team playing next to a ball-dominant MVP level player, right?
The ball-dominant player of this generation, yes.
Yeah, like a 30 to 35% usage guy for the last...
pounds the ball constantly.
Still averaging 20.
Now, to his point, it is a front court player versus a guard, but Maxey also has been at his, if you're talking about best shooting, which is the most value that he provides to the team, it has been next to Harden, as we talked about earlier. That's when he doesn't have to take all those difficult 28, 30-foot step-back jumpers. That's when you see the version of Maxey that's helping you win games and not just put up numbers and they put up a fight, but they lost the game.
All right, folks, we have two more from, you know what time it is. So I might as well tell you right away that we're going into overtime because we have two of them. We're going into overtime at allphly.com. Won't be extended overtime, but just enough overtime where we're going to go into overtime here at allphly.com. So, of course, if you're watching on the TV side, hang out with us at allphly.com as we close out the show for some OT because it is time for the Pump It Up segment of the Super Chats. I'm waiting for that Cooper Flag Sixers tomorrow. Basically like the rumor that's going to drop tomorrow. Smoke screen season, fellas. By the way, what is VJ's go-to move? Asking for a friend.
His go-to move is commanding you to pay $5 to $10 to Super
Say
Chats
the same
every
thing
day.
every day.
Let's keep it going. Keep it going through the draft season.
Oh, what happened to our screen?
All right, so what do we have here?
So the second one.
We just gave him grief. This is maybe like the first unique question Brian Pumper has asked in 3 weeks.
This is a good Super Chat comment from Pump, who says, talk to me. We have PTSD about taking the #1 point guard prospect in the draft. I question the funky jumper and the low assist stats. Enlighten me. Okay, this is a conversation driver, Pumper. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Who would like to start?
So the jumper. All right, he was pretty good off the catch, and I think pretty consistent off the catch.
Yeah.
Like actually, his numbers off the catch were really good.
He's 36%.
I think it was even higher than that. It was close, something like that.
I'll look it up while here.
Which, since all of those are threes, that's a good number. Off the dribble is a very legitimate concern. I'm not going to deny that. Like I said, I think a lot of it is that I think you can build upon that. He just didn't look as comfortable off the dribble as he did off the catch, which a lot of times doesn't come down to natural talent. It comes down to, just putting in a lot more reps. But there is enough, like I said, left to right variation where I'm not going to tell you it's a guarantee he's going to shoot. But I do think his willingness to take those shots, his effectiveness as a catch and shoot player, gives you reasonable confidence that he can improve. Maybe not become a knockdown shooter, but improve to the point where it's not a massive glaring weakness. In terms of the assist rate, I think if you watch him play, he had pretty good passing vision and pretty good sense of when to try to leverage that. And I think he did a real good job of, like I said, surveying the floor and driving with his head up. He had a 27% assist rate, something like that?
Yeah, 27.1.
What do you think James Harden at Arizona State as a freshman was?
You tell me.
24%. Which, again, I'm not comparing him to James Harden because James Harden had a lot more creativity as a passer. But we've spent so much of this time talking about the context at Rutgers, usually for the other guy. And a lot of people want to use that to explain away Ace Bailey's 8.1 assist rate, which, again, they played different roles, but 8.1 is like as bad as you'll see for a high-level prospect. 27% in that context, I don't think that's a low percentage. Now, again, I don't think he has like the plus court vision or creativity that someone like Harden has. So I don't think he has that leap in him that Harden made. I don't expect him to average 7, 8, 9 assists per game, but I think he can absolutely get to like a 5, 6 assist type thing. And more importantly, I think when he drives to the rim, he's not going to be predictable and he's going to leverage that rim pressure to create shots for his teammates. I think that's going to be good for a real good prospect.
I actually do think that the 7 is more likely than you just laid out because of, again, who he might be playing with on this particular team. Because even when we look at Maxi's between 5 and 6. Someone like Harper, again, making those creative passes that may not be as snappy as Harden's, but just the ones that get you those easier looks along the baseline, finishing at the rim. That will just add to the total. We can all pick apart how they actually get to that number, but I do think that number is reachable for him because of that 7, maybe even 8 for that comparison.
And to that point, Devon, like if you look at some of the stuff that the Pacers have run with Halliburton over the years, for example, when they have Buddy Hield, and you think about how the Sixers could do stuff like that with Harper and Maxey, Harper and McCain, right? Like run ghost screens at the top of the offense above the break. And so either the defense has to switch it, and in that case, the smaller guy is probably guarding Maxey and McCain pre-switch. If they switch it, okay, now you have Harper against a smaller player, right? So that's an opportunity for him to get into the paint, get inside the arc, draw fouls, get to the rim. If they botch the switch, right? If they try to pressure Harper, then you're letting Jared McCain or Tyrese Maxey get a free look at a 3. Like there are a lot of things just in one discrete action like that are really advantageous for the Sixers that the assist numbers can go up. But yeah, Pump, to your question and to the point that Derek was making, if you don't believe that he can become a pull-up shooter long-term, that absolutely affects the eval in terms of what tier he's in, whether you trade up for him and whether you just, stay at 3, pick whoever falls and say, this is our guy, right? I have a reasonable degree of confidence that he'll shoot because, as Derek pointed out, he shot almost 37% on catch and shoot stuff, 36.8 to be specific. That's good. Draws a lot of free throws, shot 75% of the line. Is that elite? No, but it's decent, and he's someone who invites contact and wants to shoot those free throws. And so I tend to believe the touch at the rim is the big thing, right? He has elite touch in his game, right? Yep. He has better at rim numbers as a guard than basically this entire class, unless you're talking about Malawach. And Malawach, all his shots at the rim, for the most part, are dunks and lobs and just like cleanup stuff. So for his numbers to be that good shows a level of touch that you would think eventually is going to start translating out to those pull-up jumpers. But if you're a skeptic on that, I think there's reasonable discourse we can have and say, yeah, there's concern there. I just don't think it's the difference between him being a effective NBA player or out of the league. I think it's the difference between him being good and him being an all-star, right? Like I think even without the pull-up 3, he can be a high leverage player in the league. But to get to the ultimate ceiling, that is the shot that will determine everything.
All right. And Just good conversation overall on this one. We haven't talked about Harper in depth since maybe the first week when the Sixers did land the number 3 overall pick on that Monday night in the draft lottery. So here we are a month later, and the conversation, basically to the day, the 12th, has really picked up because of the interest that Kyle and Derek have unearthed, along with Mike Scotto at Hoops Hype, about the Sixers having a conversation with the Spurs, maybe moving up to number 2, and we would think is for Dylan Harper and mixing him into the guard rotations.
And I think we didn't really get to this today. One more thing to add, right? Like, I don't think Dylan Harper's coming in, he's going to be like Gary Payton on defense, right?
No.
But when you bring a guy in who is a 6'5", 6'6" guard, who's also your leader of the perimeter offense, right? That's a great building block for a team, because then if you don't have a bruiser as a power forward, right? They're mostly playing wings. They're playing Paul George at the 4. We saw some of Yabu there last year, but he ends up playing more 5. If you don't end up changing that about your roster, it's not as big of a disadvantage now, because instead of playing 2 6'2" guys in the backcourt, you're playing a 6'2" guy and a 6'6" guy, and then 2 wing size players, right? Or even if it's Grimes, 2 of those 3 guards are 6'5", 6'6" type guys. You have real size and athleticism on the floor for switchability, for rebounding, and for more. You're more of a matchup proof team than you are if you have to play 2 small guards to put your best 5 on the floor.
It is, yeah, no, he's 6'6" in shoes, 6'10" and a half wingspan, 220 pounds. Is he going to defend a lot of threes? He might be able to defend some, but he's not, like, when I watch him, he's not like disengaged. Like, I don't think he has like elite foot speed on the perimeter, but I think he has good enough, and I think he gets through screens well enough, and I think he's enough versatility. He should at least be a neutral defender.
Last one, so we can get to before we get to the roll call. Since I bring up the Nembhard piece, Tyrese Halliburton is not super athletic. He's an athlete, but he's not super athletic. He's a dynamic passer for the stuff that he does and how he sees the floor, sees over the top of the defense. But a lot of that stuff, which is why he dropped all the way to where he did, with teams who needed point guards passed on him in the draft, or because of some of the same things that we're talking about here. But he has thrived in that role where he's become an all-star, he's become an Olympian, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. When you look at Harper, not saying he's going to be Tyrese Halliburton, who was a upperclassman when he left Iowa State, and now a multiple-time all-star and Olympian, and maybe even on the verge of an NBA champion. Similar things that we're talking about here, where the athleticism was in question,
funky shot,
the outside shot,
even though shot went in
for
yeah,
but manipulating the defense because he was a good point guard enough to be a lottery type player to come out of Iowa State. Just something to look at him and the evaluation that was there to where he is now. So similar to what we're talking about here with Dylan Harper.
I just want as
and
many
even the
guys
size that we talk about in the backcourt, where he has a bigger player with Nembhard next to him and even Neesmith, but Maxey could just use that extra size next to him.
I want as many guys on the floor who can dribble, pass, shoot, and are big enough to be defensively versatile as I can put on the floor, right? So the shot is a question with him, but if you're just saying he's not going to have the ball all the time, I'll get value out of him as a catch and shoot player. All the other stuff I feel good about. So I think, again, to reiterate, for probably 3-4 months, we've all been on the Harper's the number 2 prospect in this class, and he's in his own tier. That does not mean they're trading up. It's just, here's where we are today. Here's the newest information. We're going to see where it all ends up 2 Wednesdays from now.
It is wild. Most of the people who were yelling at us for the past month for being too down are now upset that we're a little bit too positive and optimistic.
It's the ebbs and flows of the NBA draft, man.
We like who we like. I don't know what to tell you.
And by the way, Mar, it said Halliburton's passing is elite. I said the same thing. I was just using the example of the height, lack of athleticism, or the super athlete. I won't say the lack of athleticism, the super athleticism there overall for that size and that position and all of that. All right, let's get to, because I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of this stuff again tomorrow with some more news maybe, and maybe even some other things to go along with it. The world famous roll call.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Very lively show chat today, as you could expect when the Sixers are tied to some news less than 2 weeks from the draft. Hope you guys are having some fun during this pre-draft process. We'll definitely have some fun after it's all over and we finally know who the heck it's going to be. At
2 more
number
weeks
3
of this, y'all.
Or any other pick, who we will be watching out in Summer League. And then this October, when the real games begin. So thank you, everyone who's here. Philly Sheriff, Mellow 3-Point,
Mellow, my
Hedfa,
man.
Bootzilla,
Boots.
Money Mar, the number 1 Dylan Harper hater, and all of the
Seriously.
chat. He is fighting back. He does not want Dylan Harper. And as we say with all the other people,
That's all
we
right.
respect everyone's opinions.
That's all
as
right.
long as you come in, show us that respect. Money, he wants Trey. He's a Trey guy, as do some other people want Trey in this chat for sure. Rick Morse, B Knight,
Go get him, Rick.
Jay the Jungle, Jess with the purple heart,
She's got the purple heart.
Music Lover 31, Sean
Play that
Ford,
music.
Sean Sharp, 2 Sean's back to back, Old Dirty Yams,
Oh,
my girl Winona, INS, who else? Martian Lynch,
what up, Martian?
what's up, buddy? DC Marley, the letter N. Again, I always think of Sesame Street.
I think
It's
of Men in
I
Black.
think of those crazy. Anyway, I think of Sesame Street. Akil McKnight, what's up, Akil?
Well, Quill.
Phi Chi. Who else we got in here today? Duck Holiday, as always.
Duck Holiday was active.
That's crazy.
That is
Duck
crazy.
is a Harper guy, I think, right?
Not as much.
Not
No,
as much?
I don't think.
I thought Duck was a Harper guy. Anyway, I know he's not a he, she, they. I know Duck's not a
Let's see, Bree. Put
A
some of those
VJ
up
guy, I know
there
that.
for Duck
That's for
Holiday
sure.
on the screen quickly.
B Pump, he of the Pump It Up segment. B Pump, thank you.
What up, Pump?
But especially thank you for the second super chat. I thought that was
I
a
did
good
say
No, I give you a lot of credit for
Harper- Conversation
Harper
starter.
and Maxie would
Bring
be a
more of
good
that.
fit, Duck said. So there you go. All right.
Yeah.
My bad.
Okay. I thought so. Jesse Bond, what up to Jesse?
Thank you, Bree.
Who are our other super chatters
What up,
today?
Jess?
We had Skunk
Jesse.
Riley, Marty Bones, DJ, a.k.a. Mr. Sandman, and Hedfa, who I'll
Bring
say
me a
again.
dream.
Cal Sixer,
Cal Sixer saw that one.
Randy Rubart.
What up, Randy?
What up to Randy, indeed? I think that's probably good. I just continue to scroll. Michael Wiggins. There's another Wiggins?
Aaron.
Any relation to... Who
is
knows?
there? Andrew. Michael.
Could just be an AKA as well.
There you go.
Also, shout out to Will. Shout out to Igavini. Shout out to Densley. Another one of the ace heads, although I don't know how Densley feels about Dylan. So
know.
Densley will have to catch up on that one later. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody who was here. Please, on your way out, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications each and every time that we go live
That's
on
right,
this
Philly.
show. We have a big
Harper Mania.
stream and subathon coming up next week.
Yes.
So getting those subscriptions up would be great for us. We'd really appreciate that. But of course, we'd also appreciate a thumbs up on this video because we want to thank you to super producer Bree, making it all happen on the back end, our president of basketball operations.
Yes, she
the
is.
4th member of this show.
Make the
each and
trade,
every
Bree.
day. Bree's trading for Dylan Harper. I know that. Thank you to Bree. Thank you to all of you. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. We will have a guest who will be talking more NBA draft. We're excited for that one. Until then, we'll see you. Take care.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.